everyone, and welcome to Uncut with Gina and Sukhdev. Very, very pleased today to be able to welcome our guest, Brooke Lindsay, very special lady, top one of the top 10 coaches. Um, we're going to talk about her and meet her in just a very few moments. But before we do, Sukhdev, would you like to introduce yourself and tell people what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Sukhdev Krishan. I'm the founder of Creative Discovery Group. We're a platform for coaches and consultants across 12 countries. We think really big and don't have any limitations, and we welcome other people to join us all the time. And happy to be here and very excited for the interview today.
And I'm Gina Gardner. I'm from the UK. We have people on 3 continents today, which is really very exciting. My work is all about personal empowerment and enlightened leadership. Leadership for life, whether you're leading your family, your organization. But the important thing is you have to lead you first. So I'm really fascinated to talk to Brooke because I think we've got a lot in common in terms of what we do. I always read people's bio because I want to get the richness of their lives and what they've said. And I make no apology for that because if I did it online, I'd be peering into the screen. And I don't really want to miss anything that's vital. Brooke Lindsay is a confidence coach and a positive body advocate dedicated to supporting women in practicing self-love, reclaiming their confidence, and accepting their bodies. Her mission is to empower women and amplify their voices, which is exactly what she does with her one-to-one clients and podcast. Brooke has been featured in the Daily Mail, Boss Lady magazine, and as a top 10 confidence coach in Yahoo Finance. Over the last 5 years, Brooke's created a life built on her passion for continued growth, personal healing, and helping others to do the same. She's here to remind us that you can put on a fabulous new dress and still hate what you see in the mirror. Confidence and self-acceptance is an inside job. She will help you build deep-rooted confidence that no one can mess with. Welcome. Lovely to have you on.
Wow, what a beautiful intro, how you read that. I love it. Thank you so much, Gina and Sukhdev, for having me on the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you and that we could organize this thing in different time zones. I'm really excited.
Brilliant to have you. Sukhdev, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so everybody's really excited to have you. If you could share with us a little bit of your story from the beginning, maybe even some of the challenges that you faced, and then all of a sudden, like bringing you into your area of becoming one of the top 10 coaches for confidence with Yahoo Finance. Do you remember a time where this started for you and this journey began?
Yeah, I mean, to really, I guess, give you an idea of how I got started in coaching and eventually becoming a top 10 confidence coach, featured in Yahoo Finance and the Daily Mail, and having people reach out to me, which is super exciting, but it's not necessarily easy to get there. I think we can all attest to that. But for me, my coaching journey really started when I was younger. So I think back to a time, when I was a child and growing up, I grew up in a family that was very strict. My father was very strict, so I wasn't allowed to go to parties or go out, but I was always very innately confident and outgoing, and would always sort of coach my friends, who are maybe a little bit more shy, like, but you should need to be more confident, like put yourself out there, stand up for yourself, against the bullies or whatever the case was. And so I feel like from a young age, I was quite innately confident and really sort of sure of myself. But as I'm sure we can, all say that we've been through, confidence really ebbs and flows throughout our life. And so growing up and, as a young teen, we're all sort of discovering who we are and what we want from life. And a lot of my value growing up as I became a young teenager was put on my appearance and how I looked. And so a lot of my value I saw in the appearance of my body, my face, and how I sort of carried myself and all of that, which can be good, but it also can be really negative because having so much value put on that. I entered a modeling competition. So growing up, I had a lot of different people saying you should get into modeling because I'm like 6 foot tall, which you can't tell because I'm sitting down right now, and quite thin growing up. And so I entered this modeling competition in my hometown, Mildura. And I actually ended up winning the competition, and they said, you've won because, you know, you represent diversity. Growing up, I started to get a little bit more curvy. So they're just like, you know, we're wanting to see more diversity in the industry. And I was like, amazing. I was probably at the highest of my confidence. I couldn't believe that I'd won being a young teenager. And then as soon as they took me backstage, it was a case of, listen, they took out the measuring tape, you're too fat. You're not going to make it in the industry. You know, if you want to actually make it as a serious model, you're going to have to lose weight. So essentially, you're not good enough. And as a young teenager, you can just imagine the hit that this kind of took on my confidence and my sense of who I was, because I'd put so much value on how I looked. And I went from being a really strong, outspoken girl to more submissive, lower self-esteem, and eventually I ended up developing an eating disorder because we had to go to the finals in Sydney, and it was encouraged so heavily that I lose this weight, and I would have done anything. So I developed this eating disorder and this really just unhealthy balance with food and who I was, and trying to discover myself, and going through school and, you know, bullying and all these things, different things that are going on. And you know, throughout life, I have experienced different forms of trauma that I'm sure, you know, a lot of us go through, but from bullying, unhealthy relationships, an eating disorder, a near-death car accident, sudden loss of loved ones, and just seeking validation in all the wrong places. So that's kind of a background of, you know, how confidence can ebb and flow. But over the last 5 years, I have created a life, as you were saying, Gina, just really built on my passion for growth, for continued growth, and seeing more than just what my value is on the outside, but who I am as a person, and just discovering personal healing and helping others do the same. And I started sharing my journey online on Instagram and social media, which got a really great reaction when I went from being someone who thought I needed to be this perfect, polished human being to just being my genuine, confident, weird, wacky self, and just sharing that online. And it really turned into, you know, a community online, and, you know, becoming a part of this movement for body diversity and inclusion, and finding your confidence from within. And then, as you said, turned into a podcast. So the Modeling Confidence podcast. So it's kind of the play on modeling, but it's more about modeling your confidence than anything else from within. So yeah, and then turned into a business, mentoring women who were reaching out to me saying, you know, how do you find the confidence to show your stretch marks or your roles, or, you know, be so weird and outgoing and just being yourself online. And, you know, people were needing support in that area. So that's really what I've built my business off. That's really how I've seen opportunities come, like Yahoo Finance and things like that. So, you know, as you said, Gina, it's really over my time, I've learned that confidence is an inside job, and you can, you know, have the most amazing hair, makeup, clothes, everything on, and you can feel confident, but you might still hate what you see in the mirror. So it really is all about just modeling your confidence from within.
Very powerful.
Yeah, there's sorry, there's so many people. I see some of your posts on Instagram, and you show people what some of the people online are doing, how they can, like, you know, just tuck in their stomach and go to a certain angle and have a light coming from whichever way. And then, you know, some of them are like, you're like, give the no finger, like that's not real. And
Exactly.
So for people who get, especially like some of the younger viewers who might be watching this, what advice would you give them to not, because so many people get caught up in what they see online. What advice would you have for somebody who might be feeling like they have to do these certain things or they have to be a certain way. What are some of the tips that you share with some of your clients?
My first thing that I would share, and that I think is so important for, I guess, women and men, I work with women, but for anyone to find your confidence and to feel confident in who you are and showing up as your authentic self, is to just get to know yourself. I think we're on social media and constantly have marketing messages that are thrown at us, especially as we come into the holidays, telling us we're not good enough, or we need to be this, or we need to be that. And we're, constantly pummeled with other people's messaging and their visions and what they want to do. It gets confusing what we actually want, who we actually are, and what we want from life. And I think, especially for the younger audience and, young women growing up, we don't necessarily know who we are or what we want from life. And so it's so important to do all of the techniques and, when it comes to personal development, things that are going to help you get to know yourself better. And, I've developed a few different things that can help with my clients. I created a worksheet to really help get people started, because the number one question I always get is, oh my God, I love what you're doing. This is amazing, but I could never do that, or I wouldn't know where to start. And so I created my self-love workbook, which really goes through different stages of, journaling, mindset shifts, all these different things that you can start to work on and really feel out what will work for you, because, things that work for me might not necessarily work for you, Gina. I'm sure we have different methods and ways of working with people and figuring out what's going to work best for them and where are they going to see real impact. But if you're wanting to show up as your most authentic self, you have to do the inner work. You have to get to know yourself. What are your values? What are your goals? What do you want from life? And then start to make, little shifts in your life where you notice you may be struggling. So for me, putting so much value on my physical appearance, I had a lot of really bad internal dialogue telling myself that, I would never be good enough. I was never pretty enough. I was never worthy. I could never get into the modeling industry. And I have a recent example for you guys is, a couple of years ago. So I work in modeling, but I'm now a curve model. I'm signed with an agency here in Melbourne, which represents more diverse women and men and, people of all different shapes, colors and sizes, which I love. And so I always thought I had to be this stick thin, runway model to ever succeed in the modeling industry. But as soon as I changed my story of that's not for me, my story is living my authentic life. And that is eating normally, having a healthy relationship with food, having a healthy relationship in my mind. But 5 years ago, I would tell myself I wasn't worthy, I couldn't do it, all of that kind of stuff. And as soon as I noticed that internal dialogue happening and I shifted it and I reframed it to, you know what, I can do this and I can do it in my own style, in my own way. And I started to notice I was, getting more work in the modeling industry. I was calling in more clients. I was sharing my story online and I was drawing in more people in my community because they could see that I was being genuine and I wasn't trying to be anyone that I was not. And I went to a casting the other day, and this might be TMI, let me know if it is, but it was for a lingerie shoot. And the lady said, oh, is one of your breasts bigger than the other? And straight away, I was just like, oh yeah, it is. That's like totally normal for most women. But 5 years ago, Brooke would have been like, sunken in, oh my God, so much shame, how embarrassing. Like I would have and they would have seen that and I wouldn't have got the job. I got the call the other day. They're like, you got the job. Brilliant. Even though, I thought, that's not, people see that as not perfect, but that's human. And as long as you hold yourself with confidence and believe in yourself and know that you're worthy and those things are normal, you can really put that across and build upon your confidence.
Yeah.
One of the things that strikes me is that we live in a world where there is a second epidemic, and that second epidemic is comparisonitis.
Yes.
We compare ourselves to what we see on the screen, what we see on social media, what we see in magazines and so on, and with other people that we know. But for the most part, certainly in the media, on films and so on, you're so right that we don't see reality. It's an illusion.
Oh, for sure.
And I think one of the challenges, particularly for youngsters, you know, when teenagers go through lots of angst, don't they? They want to fit in and they want to belong, and it's really hard for them to recognize that actually they are comparing themselves with something that's just not real.
Mm.
And I was reading an article the other day which talks about, you know, the number of young boys who are now have got eating disorders, who have
Yeah.
dysmorphia in terms of hating what they
Mm-hmm.
see and so on. And you talked about having an awareness, and
Mm.
that created the shift.
Mm.
Was there something outside the modeling thing that actually made you recognize that in order to survive and thrive, you had to make that shift? Because lots of people would have been bowed down by that and thought, well, that's it, you know, I can't model, I'm not fitting in, and there are many people who can't seem to find their way out of that, but you did.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think I saw value. I started to see value in who I was as a human being, because at the time I was also studying at university. So a lot of my modeling journey was when I moved here to Melbourne, and I heard a lot of the same thing. And a lot of the time it was, oh, you look great when they see me because I'm 6 foot tall. So, you know, proportionally, I look, you know, like, I guess, an average size. But as soon as the measuring tape came out, it was like, you're not in proportion, you know, your hips are too big, you need to lose the fat off your hips, and just fat, that word kept coming up for me. And I was at university at the time, but I was also looking into, I had a mentor, and she was a coach. She was actually a business coach because I studied media and communications. But a lot of the things that she was talking about was shifting the way you talk and the language that you use. And I started to see fat as something that, why is that a negative thing? Why do we see, you know, someone calls us fat and it's an insult, someone calls us thin and it's a compliment, but why? And so I started to really challenge, you know, society's language and the things that we're taught growing up and all of these things that are learned habits, and started to really challenge, is this real for me? Like, am I actually fat? Do I feel this way about myself? Or is it because someone's telling me that? And to be honest, I kind of gave up on the dream of modeling and thought I'm made for more than this, because I started to get into the coaching sphere and started to think about other things, and I was enjoying my studies. And so I kind of just thought it's not worth it. And I started to be challenged by my mentor and my coach into thinking, what do you want? And thinking about who I am as a human being, and do my values align? So I think the shift really was, you know, being at university whilst modeling. So I had these two worlds, and choosing a healthy world that was going to challenge me mentally. And I was thinking, you know, in 10 years time, I'm not going to be able to do modeling, but you can these days. But I just started to think there's more value in my mind, who I am as a person, developing that, working on that so that I can have healthier relationships. Because like I said, you know, I had gone through and have been through traumatizing things that really challenge you in life. And if you don't have the tools to get out of those spaces, like you said, Gina, you will be kept there and you will stay down and you won't feel like you know how to get yourself out of it. And so I chose to really make a decision to choose my mind and choose, you know, my career in coaching and mentoring, really seeing what that was going to look like for me. Because at the time I didn't know what it would look like. But in the end, the modeling followed, but it followed in a healthy way that worked for me. And I really created this life of, you know, building upon what I want and just going with that, instead of trying to fit into this mold or comparing myself and thinking I need to be that person because that person's successful. That person got there because, you know, we don't know what they've been through. You have to get there on your own path because that's the only way.
Yeah, very true. Sukhdev.
Yeah, so I did a little research and I thought this was kind of interesting. And so like comparing like men and women in their mid 20s, men appear to be more confident, and
Mm-hmm.
in their 30s, men were more confident. And then in the 40s, it was equal. In the 50s, it was equal. But in 60 plus, women were more confident than men. I'm just wondering what you might think, well, why that happens as we go, go on in our lives and the ages that we reach, why there's a shift like that.
Yeah, first of all, I'm really excited to get older because I can't wait for all of that confidence that is to come. But as I said earlier, there's a lot of different things in our life, our upbringing, our heritage, our culture, where we grew up, the schools we went to, all of these different things contribute to how confident you are as a human being. And throughout our lives, these different things, the jobs that we have, the relationships, all of these things will either contribute to our confidence or draw from our confidence and our life experiences and all of that. So it really, and I guess it's different for men and women. And I would say for women, I know sort of in my age bracket right now, a lot of women, their confidence is a lot lower than men. So when we're going for jobs or, in our business, anything like that, men can actually, there are studies to show that men can actually be underqualified for a role and will go for the job. And women will be overqualified, but they won't go for the job because we feel like we need to tick all the boxes and then some. And we have this fear, all these fears around being judged, putting ourselves out there. What if we don't do it, blah, blah, blah. Whereas men are kind of just happy-go-lucky, like, yeah, I got this, I have the confidence, and they go for it. And I think women are really made to work for their confidence and put themselves out there and challenge themselves. And so that's why I could definitely see a trend, as women start to slowly gain confidence and become more confident as they get older. And, to the point where they're in their 60s and they're like, what, I've been through so much and I've pushed myself and I've worked on my confidence because I've had to, because it didn't necessarily come as easy to me. So I can see, as we get older, why our confidence would overtake men's. Were you saying that men's was dropping or it was just women's was?
Yeah, women were more confident from 60 plus. And
yeah.
40s and 50s, they were equal. 20s and 30s, men were more confident.
Yeah, I would say, as young men, they are a lot more outgoing, a lot more, go-getter, a lot less sort of judging themselves, because as women, we are told we have to look and act and be a certain way, whereas it's a lot different for men. Not to say that it's not challenging for men whatsoever, but I think, it really, you do see that shift as women get older because they've had to work for it, whereas maybe men go the opposite direction. But feel free to jump in, Gina, if you think you know why.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it?
It is.
Shifting, because I think we live in such a visual age that many more young men are very lacking in confidence, and a lot of that because they are starting to equate more with how they look than who they are than they did in the past. But it's interesting, and I'm in my 60s. And I look back as a teenager, I was overweight. I had terrible eczema. I had to wear white cotton gloves at school. You can imagine as a teenager.
Yeah.
And I'd moved schools several times because my father's job had moved. And I had no confidence. When I started working and I started work as a teacher, my confidence was huge professionally because I found something I was really good at. When I retired from headship or principalship, and I was, how old was I? I was 51. And my school was incredibly successful. But as I retired, I was back to being 15 because I wasn't my job. Who was I if I wasn't being a head teacher? And my confidence in me went right back. And since then, I've developed the relationship with myself that work got in. I was going to say got in the way of, but I didn't need it because I had the job, and the job gave me the confidence. I'm interested in your take in terms of how often people use their job almost as as, you know, I'm good at my job, so I don't have to worry about my relationship with me because I'm being whoever my job.
Mm,
And what your thoughts
yeah.
about that are?
I think so many things going on in my head. The first thing is that I think we attach ourselves to labels.
We do.
So, you know, whether you, depending on what you identify as, or, you know, what role you have, you know, you might come into work and say, I'm Brooke and I'm a confidence coach. And if I'm tied to that label and then it's taken away from me, who am I? And so it really is about getting rid of all those labels. You know, I used to have in my Instagram bio, you know, all these different things of like model and, you know, what I was studying or whatever the case may be. And I identified as those things, but those things are things that I do. They don't define me. They're not who I am as a human being. So I think it's really easy to for your identity to become who you think you are as a person. And if that's taken away, or you know, you see yourself as a wife and you get a divorce, who are you? You lose yourself. And so it's so important when it comes to relationships, when it comes to the roles you play in different people's lives and what jobs you have, that you have a solid foundation. And going back to, you know, what are your values? What are your goals? Who are you? What do you want from life? What's the kind of person you want to be outside of all of those labels? Because if it is taken away, then you're not left with nothing and feeling worthless and empty. And, you know, it is so easy to do, Gina, to know, attach everything you are, and because you felt so valuable in that role and you were so successful and so happy, and then that's all gone and you're kind of like, oh, what's my value now? I don't have those things. So doing the inner work is so important. And
I just
I
wondered if that's why men's confidence in
mm,
comparison dips, because men very much, in my experience, attach the label of the value to the label in terms of what they do. I think
100%.
I think women do it as well, but I think even
Mm,
more. So when they retire, who am I when I've retired? And so
yeah,
women tend to have the fact that they've run a home, maybe run a family. They've got a variety of titles generally, whereas I think men often it's very tunnel visioned in terms of their business
mm,
and their professional life. I think
mm,
it's shifting though, because so many, um, you know, like times are changing, and it's not one job for your whole of your life anymore, is it? That people
no,
diversify.
no, that's the
What
thing.
can
And also,
parents do? Oh, sorry.
no, you're right.
What can parents do to, because I heard on both your ends, like when you were teenagers, that your confidence levels were low. So let's say if there's a parent and they have a teenage daughter, for example, what can they do to help them build a healthy dose of confidence to, you know, transition them into their 20s and then their 30s? Um, any advice on that?
You go ahead and
Me? Yeah, okay, I'll
I'll
jump in. I think when you're a teenager, a lot of the time you can't necessarily be helped because you think you know the best way, you think you know what you want, you're embarrassed by your parents. So it's really tricky for parents to try and step in and help because they may be overstepping some boundaries. They may, you know, make their teenagers put more of a wall up. So in my opinion, as a parent, all you can do is be there for them, let them know that you are there for them when anything in their life happens. You know, you're open, you're listening, you're there. And if they get themselves into a situation or they feel like they're really struggling, they can come to you about anything. Because I think the most tricky thing to navigate as a parent, and I'm not speaking from experience, so Gina, I'll let you speak. I'm not sure if you're a parent, but it is really, really tricky to navigate trying to just keep those avenues open so that your children can come to you if they're struggling, if, you know, they're in a situation where they need help. Because if you are, you know, the helicopter parent that's always trying to get into their business, they're going to shy away and hide from you. If you are, you know, away all the time and you're not interested in their lives, they're not going to want to open up to you. So it's just about a balance of letting them know that you are there for them. If they need to talk about anything, they can come to you about anything, even if they might get in trouble or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, all that matters is their mental health and their physical health and well-being. So as long as they know that, I think that is the bottom line, the most important thing.
I absolutely agree with everything you've said, but I would say that it has to start earlier than teenage. So it starts when they're very small, and saying to a child, you can do this. I have confidence that you can do this, and helping them succeed. So many parents say, oh, you're just like me, you're useless at math. Or they criticize the child rather than the behavior. Oh, you're so stupid, rather than, well, that's a rather silly thing to do, or a rather stupid thing to do, and I expect more from you. So you start to build the confidence when they're little, and the open communication. And I think parents have a hard job, don't they? Whatever they do, it's wrong.
Oh, for sure.
Getting that balance between not dashing in and rescuing them, so that they actually build some resilience, but not leaving them to drown. And I think so you start small, but lines of communication, absolutely vital. Because if you've got those in place by the time they get to be a teenager, then you're not trying to build a relationship, you're actually using the relationship that you've already forged. Can I ask you, you work with women commonly, that's your, by the sense that, I mean, that they're your client base. Can you identify what you see as the major issues that you work with that can contribute to lack of confidence?
The main one is usually, depending on the situation, but a lot of themes I see come around social media, the media in general, because especially during the pandemic, we have people at home who are constantly on their phone or constantly on social media. And as we talked about earlier, comparing themselves to other people. This is where they are. Why aren't I there yet? And so when we're constantly comparing ourselves and not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy, we get in this cycle of, I shouldn't even try, or if I do, I'm not gonna know how to do it as good as them. I won't succeed. And so you put yourself in this position where you're in this never-ending cycle of just comparing yourself and not feeling worthy or good enough, and having the fear of putting yourself out there and being judged. And so women would rather stay small than take up space because they don't want to be embarrassed or they don't want to be judged. And I think social media is a massive contributing factor to this, because at the end of the day, it is a tool, and it depends how you want to use it. And so one of the first things I establish with my clients and with the women I work with is, how are you using social media? What kind of things are you searching on the internet that what ads are you being fed? Are you aware of the fact that you've searched this and now it's feeding you this messaging? And really getting people aware of those kind of messages, because it's so important to our mental health, but we don't even realize, because it's kind of just like background noise, but it's constantly going. And so I work with women on, who are you following? How does that person make you feel? And really starting to scroll on your feeds with intention. And to be honest, with my business, I barely scroll anymore, only if, I'm having one of those days where I'm just laying on the couch doing nothing. But if I'm ever on social media, I try to be really intentional about who I am consuming, like what I avoid scrolling. So I have my community of women who I like to check in on. So a lot of the time I'm searching for names, I'm commenting, I'm sharing positivity and light and positive energy. And I'm intentionally doing that so that I'm not consumed by just the endless scrolling. And it's a lot trickier now because we have, Instagram Reels and the Explore page and things where we can't necessarily control what we see, but you can control who you choose to follow. and who you choose to unfollow. And I think if you're following people who make you feel negative or make you feel insecure, it's as simple as unfollowing them and creating a feed where every single person, is contributing to your life in some way and making you feel more positive, and also encouraging you to put yourself out there, step up, challenging you to become more resilient, to become more confident. And, you're seeing that woman as, if she can do it, then I can do it. And you're not seeing it as, oh, she's amazing, she's great, that means, I can't have that. There is enough room in this world for everyone to succeed. You just have to believe in yourself, and you have to have the right messaging around you. So I would say that was probably the number one contributing factor to lack of confidence with the women that I work with.
What do you think some of these younger women or even men are searching for when they're following somebody like this and they're like, I want to be like that person? What do they want to, like, what are they looking to fulfill in their own life? What do you
a lot of the common examples are, the Kardashians, famous people on TikTok, or just these people who are portrayed in society as the ideal person, the Kim Kardashian figure. And as women, you want the big boobs and the small waist and the big hips. But, 10 years ago, I think Twiggy was, in the 90s, she was the one that everyone wanted to be like, and she was stick thin. So it's kind of this never ending shift of what we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to be. At one point, it's stick thin is idolized in the 90s, when I was growing up. Now it's the Kardashians, where if you don't have a massive butt and big boobs, then you don't fit into society. And I think as women, we just see these people in the media, maybe you watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians or all these other shows, and so you just follow them. And so you're constantly seeing them in expensive clothing at places that you can't afford, all these things that, you think that you need to be happy in life, which makes you unhappy. But as soon as women realize that they need to learn to love and accept who they are now, right now, whether they feel like they're overweight or they feel like they haven't got enough money, if you can't come to terms with loving and accepting yourself as you are right now, you're never going to get to a place where you can move forward or you can be happy and you can start to achieve the success that you maybe want. But you may get there and realize you didn't even want that. It's just because you constantly saw Kim Kardashian posting about it on your feed, who a lot of the time, they're paid to sell us these things, women these things. And so I think, that's the kind of not saying that you shouldn't follow Kim Kardashian or anything like that, but it can be really detrimental if you're constantly being fed these messages that you need to be this person or look a certain way or have a certain thing, a Rolls Royce, to be happy.
It's the story that you make around it that's important, not the actual what you're doing, but how you can take it forward. I'm really fascinated. I mean, I really applaud what you're doing and how you have turned your situation into something that can help so many people. I think it's absolutely brilliant. What's your dream? You are you're a relatively young woman who has still, one would hope, a huge amount of life in front of you, and you have achieved so much already. So what's the dream?
That's a great question. And as we sort of come to the close of the year, I usually start to think about, what's my plans for next year? What's my 5-year plan? And I think this year has just been such a blur of, ups and downs. My partner and I just moved into our new home. That was a massive dream for us for a long time. We've achieved that, progressing my business. And, I've been featured in, this year, the Daily Mail, Yahoo Finance, all of these amazing accolades. And at the end of the day, I've experienced a lot of loss this year, which has been crazy to think about, all the amazing things that we have created for ourselves in our life, but also all of the things that we've lost. And for me, over the holidays, I'm really taking some time to slow down and really reevaluate what, my future looks like, because, for a really long time, I saw it a certain way, and now I'm seeing it start to shift, and I'm seeing more women come to me. And so, of course, my initial thoughts when you say that are, you know, creating a community where we all come to support one another, whether it's in person or online, and just creating this, I guess, a movement to see change in the media, to see more diversity, more inclusion, hear more voices. And I think that's probably one of my main missions at the moment. You know, on my podcast, I'm speaking to so many different women who have done it all before. You know, I'm actually sharing a podcast today with a melanoma survivor who lost her eye and has been through so much in her life. And I want to hear from these women. And so my main mission is to continue to empower women, to hear from women, to amplify their voices, and to create a safe space for women to come online, because I know what it's like to be secluded in, you know, a smaller town where maybe you can't find your people there. But if you go online and you come to, you know, my community, where we're supporting one another, we're encouraging each other to chase our dreams and figure out who we are and what we want from life, and get out of the healthy relationship and do these things for us and put ourselves first. I think I really hope that in the future we start to see a shift where there's a lot less, you know, comparing ourselves to others, a lot less, you know, eating disorders and feeling like we're not good enough. And so my mission is to continue that messaging, to continue to have different men and women on the podcast and really amplify their voices and just spread awareness that you're beautiful no matter what. Beauty comes from within, confidence comes from within, and you just really have to work on the inner deep confidence. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the goal. But for the end of the year, I'm just slowing down and just really taking in what this year has been, because it really has been a crazy year, hasn't it?
I think that's for everybody. But that's an amazing goal and very, very much needed. Now, I just finished, but I've been a governor at the local sixth form college, for example, and over a third of the youngsters there, they say that they have a mental health issue. And I would say that of that third, probably 95% of it is around self-worth, confidence, and how people perceive how they look is a huge part of that. Sukhdev, you would like to, are there questions that you'd like to ask?
Yeah. So I'm just listening to the conversation and going back to when you were talking about, you know, in the 90s, it used to be about being thin. And then I remember, like, even in the 80s, it was about women would be like, hey, does this make my butt look big? And we'd have to, like, men would have to answer, no, it doesn't. And now it's a total opposite, where it's like all the big boobs and big butts. Is it like seems to be this little shift in these trends? What is going to be, is there going to be like a next trend, do you think? Or is there going to be, is it going to be like, just be you, you know, like, what do you think, what do you think is going to happen next in the world for women and body types and things like that?
Within society, the goalposts will always shift constantly, because at the end of the day, the media, society, they're all about making money. And if you stay in a place for too long, then women can achieve that, and then, you know, you're not making as much money. So of course the goalposts are always going to shift of, this is what you need to look like now. Oh, the fashion's changing, this is what you need to buy now. So that, you know, that's how the media works. But as Gina asked, my mission and a lot of movements we're seeing now where women are sharing that it is normal to have, you know, these mental health issues, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all of these things are things that we go through as human beings. And the most important thing is that you learn to accept yourself and work through those things, because if you think that they're not normal, that makes it a whole lot worse. And so I'm hoping in the future that we start to see more diversity on television. We start to see more diversity on social media and all of these different places, so that people can relate and say, oh my gosh, she looks like me. She has this perceived flaw, air quotation marks, but she thinks they're beautiful. Maybe I'm beautiful. Maybe I can learn to accept myself. And so we're starting to see this movement. And for me, it really was when I started to get into curvy modeling, and I started to follow these curvy models, and they were sharing their cellulite and their stretch marks. And roles and all these things that we're told are terrible, and you need these creams and elixirs and things to fix them. But of course, is companies trying to sell us their creams, elixirs thing. So it's about becoming self-aware of, do I really hate this about myself, or have I been told that I hate this about myself? And so the goalposts will always shift for men and women. You know, men are made to believe that they need a six-pack and that they need to have muscles and look a certain way to be idolized by women, because that's how it's perceived in the media. But I mean, my partner doesn't have a six-pack and I think he's bloody sexy as hell. You know, it's always shifting for men and women. You know, men need to look a certain way to be on the runway, but where are the curvy men? Where are the real men? Because when you go into a store, half the time, you know, you're not looking for, you know, this tiny little t-shirt. We want clothes that are going to fit our men. And so where's the diversity? Where's the representation? So hopefully in the future, and my mission is to, you know, promote more of this. So we are seeing it on TV, so that we are seeing it, you know, in front of our faces, and people start to understand that it's normal. We're human beings. We're going to have all of these different things, and hopefully become more accepting, so that when the media tells us we need to look this way, we go, I know you're trying to sell me stuff. I don't need to look that way. I need to just be myself.
Sounds great. We're getting towards the end of the show, and we really want people to know where to find you, how they can work with you, how they can join your community. So now is your opportunity to share, let everybody know where you are and how to be in contact.
For sure. So you can pretty much find me anywhere. I'm by Brooke Lindsay on most things. So my website is bybrookelindsay.com. Of course, you can find, you know, my coaching page there if you would like to work with me. I also have so many amazing resources on there, from, you know, a creating confidence playlist, my workbooks, you know, my community, links to my community, all of my podcasts, you know, where I have all the women on there. So you can find me there. I'm most active on Instagram. So at by Brooke Lindsay is where people can find me and my amazing community. And, you know, I would love to welcome anyone into the community to really become a part of something that is really amazing and connects a lot of women. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
And we'll make
sure, and of course my podcast.
We'll make sure all of those details are on the show notes, so people can actually find you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Final question before I bring our show to a close today.
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. And I know you're a day ahead of us. You know, it's a bit of a trying to organize all this with 3 different time zones. And I'm so grateful you were able to make it and share all your knowledge with us.
I really am too. You're in the past, so I won't tell you what happens today.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute joy to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to watching how you develop and grow, because I have no doubt that you've made a fabulous start, but there is much more to come. Thank you so much. You take care. And once again, thank you for joining us on the show. We really appreciate that. Please share the programs and let other people know about them, because our guests have something very special to offer. And today, Brooke, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.